Hey guys, welcome back to another review. Today I will be reviewing FiiO's new flagship in-ear monitor, the FA9. In case you're interested, I also made an unboxing and first impressions video, so if you want, you can go check that out. At this time, the earphones cost $530 on Hi-Fi Go and $500 on Amazon, but you know, you will of course be paying a little bit more for tax, so it will come closer to about $550. Starting off with the build and design, it uses the same skin-friendly resin that they used with the FA7, which makes the IEM transparent and also makes it feel very solid. What I liked about the FA7 is that the IEM has a solid resin build, and it's not just a hollow shell like some of the other transparent IEMs, and I'm glad to see that same durability and build on the FA9. Over long-term use, the scratch-resistant resin will still make it look pretty much like new. Now, being transparent, you will be able to see all the internal components, like the balanced armatures and the very long tubing system they made, which is very cool, and the diamond cut faceplate just looks stunning. Like, it already looks very bling and amazing in the pictures, but like, dang, it just looks even more stunning in person. I'm happy to say in general that this looks and feels very premium, as it should for such an expensive IEM. So yeah, build and design are excellent. Oh yeah, one quick note though. The metal grill, or like that little mesh covering on the nozzle, came off on my right driver, and I didn't want to have it keep falling off by itself, so I decided to remove them on both the drivers. Moving on to the comfort, I found these to be very comfortable earphones, and I basically had no issues with them after my ears adjusted to them. Just like the FA7, my ears felt a little sore after using them for the first day or two, but eventually my ears gotten used to it, and I haven't had any problems since. These are a little bit bigger than the FA7, and in comparison, it does stick out of my ear just a tiny bit more. But still very comfortable nonetheless, and I can wear them for basically the whole day. The only problem I had so far with the comfort is that it creates some slight pressure when it's in my ear and I move my head around a lot, but I found this to only be the case with the silicone tips. Foam gets rid of the problem, but it heavily dampens the highs, so I don't use the foam tips. The tuning switches are also flush with the exterior, so I didn't feel them scratching my ears when inserting or removing them. To change the switches, I always use the flat screw on the end of the cleaning brush, and I never tried, but I imagine it would be very difficult to change the switches with your fingers, since they are very tiny and it's almost impossible to get to without a tool, which I think is a good thing. I don't want the switches to accidentally change when I take the earphones on and off. Now, the switches from my testing, they do make a very clear difference in the sound. Now, the differences aren't very drastic, but it is very clear and audible, and I could easily hear the adjustments made. The first switch changes the impedance, on making it easier to drive, and off making it harder to drive, but with a more cleaner sound. From my testing, having it on definitely makes it a few decibels easier to drive, but I found that I didn't like the sound because everything sounded slightly soft, dull, and kind of muffled, like there was a very thin tissue or paper blocking the sound. Having it off, though, made the sound much cleaner with no audible noise. What's interesting, and FiiO doesn't mention this, but the first switch also kind of changes the frequency response, not just the driving power. The FA9 are noticeably brighter with the first switch off, and you can see how it bumps up the higher mids quite a bit on the frequency response graph. The second switch changes the treble. On for more treble, or off for more balanced treble. Now, I'm a bit sensitive to treble, and having it off already has plenty of treble for me, so I just left it off. Just to test, I tried it with the second switch on, and I did find the highs just a tad bit uncomfortable for me, and it's almost getting to that point of slightly sibilant. The third and final switch changes the bass and the mids. On for more balanced bass and more mids, or off for more bass and less mids. Having everything off, which is the bass boost mode, is what sounds most similar to the FA7 to me. But over time, I found that I actually prefer to have the third switch on, because with the bumped up mids, I hear a lot more clarity in the vocals and the musical instruments. So, my overall preferred settings are off, off, on. So finally, let's talk about the sound. Just a quick FYI, I am powering them with my Ear Studio ES100 using a balanced cable. I've been listening to mostly FLAC and 320 kilobits per second MP3 files. And about the sound, I gotta say I am very impressed and pleased with the sound. The sound to me is very balanced across the whole frequency range, while still sounding very energetic, lively, and slightly warm. Starting with the low end, the balanced armatures provide very clean and punchy bass. Especially in the bass boost mode, you will hear that emphasized bass like in the FA7, but in the normal mode, where I like it, it is just the right amount and the extension is great. It doesn't have that very deep and rumbling bass that you hear from a dynamic driver. On these, it is quick, tight, and punchy that doesn't feel slow or loose. I found that it kicks in when it is needed and takes a step back when it's supposed to. To me, it never sounded overly bassy or overpowering, where it bleeds into the other frequencies like the mids. The mids are also excellent and well tuned. Vocals sound very clear and distinct, and I can hear like the texture, if that's the right word I'm looking for. I can clearly hear like the smoothness or the raspiness in a singer's voice, as well as their breath. And when listening to strings, for example, a cello was playing in the Final Fantasy VII Remake soundtrack, and I could clearly hear like the grit from the rosin bow rubbing against the string. Overall, the instruments and vocals just sound very natural and realistic, with some hint of warmth to it. I found myself listening to all my older songs and picking out vocals in the background I never even heard before, even after listening with other IEMs like the KZ-ZS10 Pros and the FA7. If you are used to a typical V-shaped tuning, these earphones will make voices stand out so much more. Onto the highs, I found they have just the right amount of sparkle and detail without being sibilant. Like I said before, I'm a bit sensitive to treble, which is why I really enjoyed the FA7, but I found these have much more treble than the FA7, yet I never found these to be sibilant either, with the second switch off. In fact, after going back to the FA7, I really started to miss all the detail and the sparkle that the FA9 brings to my music, and everything just sounds so much airier and more detailed on the FA9. The treble is also very smooth and has plenty of detail and clarity without ever being fatiguing or like piercing. The soundstage is not particularly massive or that open, which is the case for most IEMs, but I found that it is wide and the imaging is very direct. Like I said in my first impressions video, it is very clear where on the stage the sounds are coming from. Instrument separation is also very top notch on these, and music never sounded congested. If you really love that dark, bass heavy warm sound from the FA7, you might miss some of that here, but I've grown to really love all the extra details and the clarity that these earphones can bring. The only downside for me is the pressure in the ears when I move my head around and the average soundstage. So yeah, that's it for this review. It's a little lengthier than usual, but I really tried my best to describe the sound that I am hearing from these earphones. Now I'm out about $500, but I can say that it is well worth it. That's the end of this review. I will see you guys next time.